And good morning. We're very happy to have you here with us today. I'm Savannah Sellers. Joe is off this morning, but guess what? Christine Romans is going to join us a little later this hour. We're going to begin our show, though, in Switzerland, where President Trump landed moments ago and is set to give a high-stakes speech this morning before the global elite at the World Economic Forum in Davos. The president's arrival was delayed, though, by an electrical issue on Air Force One. Now, the plane was forced to return to Joint Base Andrews before everyone on board was switched to a backup plane. The visit comes amid heightened tensions between the U.S. and Europe over the president's determination to buy resource-rich Greenland. Now, Denmark, which the territory is a part of, and Greenland itself have consistently said that the Arctic island is not for sale. Europe and NATO have also come out in defense of Greenland's sovereignty. The disagreement prompted President Trump to threaten additional tariffs against 8 European countries if Greenland is not sold to the U.S. by February 1st. It's a threat that was widely condemned by the European Union, which is now considering retaliatory measures. Well, speaking at the White House yesterday, President Trump said he was optimistic about finding a solution during this trip to Davos. Listen.
We have a lot of meetings scheduled on Greenland, and I think things are going to work out pretty well, actually. I think that we will work something out where NATO is going to be very happy and where we're going to be very happy. But we need it for security purposes. We need it for national security.
How far are you willing to go to acquire Greenland?
You'll find out.
We've got a team standing by to talk about all this and more. We're going to start off, though, with NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez. He is in Washington. Gabe, thanks for being with us. So the president is getting ready to give this speech in Switzerland. First, though, I want to start with the trip itself, this bumpy start. What happened with Air Force One?
You know, Savannah, good morning. The president had said that this would be an interesting trip to Davos. Well, before he even got there, it got interesting. The president leaving late yesterday, and the plane, Air Force One, was turned around a short time after takeoff, had to head back to Joint Base Andrews, as you said. The White House saying that it was a minor electrical issue. The president boarded a smaller plane without incident and is now on his way to Davos. But again, bit of a hiccup right before the president even got to Switzerland in the first place, Savannah.
So, of course, this trip abroad coming amid his desire that he has made quite known to acquire Greenland. And also, this is the first time since he's threatened those additional tariffs over Greenland, and obviously heading to leaders of many of those countries that would be impacted by said tariffs. Clearly, this is going to be a major source of tension at Davos. What can we expect from the president's speech this morning? What's his message going to be?
Look, the president at this point feels emboldened after several foreign policy moves over the last several weeks. Of course, the ouster of Nicolas Maduro, arrested to stand trial here in the U.S. And the president feels that he and the United States should take over Greenland. This is something that he said now for quite some time, but really over the past several days, there's been this increasing back and forth, this increasing tension with NATO allies. We heard from the president yesterday at the White House. He says that leaders, other world leaders, they're nice to him to his face and sometimes not so much when he's not around. But he doesn't seem to be backing down here, Savannah. And so we do expect him to take quite make a bold statement when he addresses world leaders in Davos.
Gabe, and tell us what we have been hearing from other world leaders' speeches at Davos so far. It seems like this rift over tariffs, Greenland, it has united European and NATO allies against President Trump, really, right?
Yes, we've already been hearing from world leaders, as you said, at the forum. We've heard from the British Prime Minister as well as French President Emmanuel Macron, even a Danish lawmaker who used profane language to push back against what Donald Trump was planning to do in Greenland. Let's listen to what some of the world leaders have already said.
We do prefer respect to bullies. We do prefer science to plotism, and we do prefer rule of law to brutality.
Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. Great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons, tariffs as leverage.
And of course, Savannah, this all comes just days after a remarkable text message exchange that, by the way, we've now been seeing publicly with the Norway's prime minister releasing this exchange between himself and President Trump, where world leaders have been trying to de-escalate the situation here, and President Trump responding to Norway's prime minister, linking his perceived snub by the Nobel Committee. And then we see those live pictures now in Switzerland of the U.S. delegation arriving there. But Savannah, a lot of tensions here, and we expect this to play out over the next 2 days in Davos. All
right, Gabe, we know you will keep bringing us the latest there. Gabe, thank you so much. Well, I want to get back to this unplanned turnaround of Air Force One last night. We're going to bring in NBC News aviation analyst Jeff Guzzetti, also a retired aircraft accident investigator. Jeff, always great to have you with us to help really break down some of these moments. There you are seeing the president arriving there in Switzerland after this delay. So the New York Times is reporting some details here, saying that some in-cabin lighting wasn't working. The AP is reporting some lights went off briefly in the cabin after takeoff. As a pilot, you hear details like that. You know, ultimately this plane was turned around. What kind of electrical problems could develop mid-flight that would make you make that drastic decision like that, turn the plane around?
Good morning, Savannah. Well, there could be a myriad of things, right? So this is a 35-year-old aircraft, over 35 years old, this 747, and it's heavily modified for electrical equipment, for avionics, for communication devices, security equipment. So it needs a lot of energy to power that equipment, and the 4 engines on the 747 have generators. So perhaps a generator came offline, perhaps there was an electrical bus that failed. I don't think the president and his team were in danger. I just think they were inconvenienced. Again, an older airplane with a lot of electrical equipment, and something minor occurred.
And again, right now on your screen, these are live pictures of President Trump arriving in Switzerland, where he will be addressing those world leaders at Davos, the World Economic Forum, and a few hours late, as we've been discussing, because of this delay. You mentioned the age of Air Force One. There are basically 2 planes that are predominantly used sort of interchangeably as Air Force One. They're both around that age, both been flying for nearly 4 decades. We're not sure which one was in service last night, but what kinds of technical issues can present themselves with an airplane of that age?
Well, so the wiring is old, and so you might get chafing in the wiring, and a piece of equipment might short out. And you've got, even though that this is the president's plane, they really wanted, some of the stuff has to be low tech so it can't be hacked. So you just might be dealing with older type of analog electrical equipment, and they can be persnippety at times. And I think this occurred a little less than an hour right after takeoff, and out of an abundance of caution, they decided just to turn back around and then use the newer 757, which is typically Air Force Two for the vice president. Well, it became Air Force One when Trump and his staff moved over to that aircraft.
Yeah, you mentioned that 757, the fact that the Air Force One, the 2 there in that fleet, those are specially modified Boeing 747s. What are the main differences between those, between what has been modified on Air Force One versus like what we might fly on?
So it's basically the same airframe, right? It's got the same look as a 747 that's in passenger service. But the inside is completely carved out to have like a little flying oval office, a communication center. It's got a little passenger seating section for the press. And again, it's got a lot of additional military avionics and electrical equipment on board that draws a lot of power. And that modification was likely involved in this minor electrical issue.
Jeff Guzzetti, thank you very much for covering one piece of this important story this morning as the president gets on the road. Let's cover another piece of that story now and get the view from Greenland. NBC News correspondent Ellison Barber, she has made her way there for us. Ellison, good morning. First up, just help us understand, walk us through, give us a little refresher on Greenland's history with Denmark. We keep on saying it's this Danish territory, and really its strategic significance to Denmark and really to the world with its location.
Yeah, so it is a Danish territory. It is largely autonomous, though. So it was initially a Danish colony, but colonial status, that formally ended in 1953. And since then, there have been two major pieces of legislation expanding Greenland's independence. The most significant one, the Self-Government Act of 2009. And basically what that did is almost everything you can think of domestically, Greenland is in charge of that. They have their own government. They have their own parliament. When it comes to things like foreign affairs, defense, and monetary policy, Denmark still oversees that. Two other really significant things that came out of that act in 2009 is the fact that Greenlanders are able to hold a referendum at any point when they feel politically and economically ready, if they choose to vote on whether or not to become fully independent. So they essentially have an exit clause in that legislation. The other big thing is that they get a massive annual block grant from Denmark, about $560 million that makes up a significant portion of their annual budget. So in terms of the mineral resources that are here, the things that people are interested in on a bigger scale, the United States has had a military presence in Greenland since World War II. There's a space base that we have up north. It's considered a cornerstone of the U.S.'s missile warning system as well as surveillance for space. Then there's this aspect of rare earth minerals. Greenland has some of the largest deposits of rare earth minerals. Those are incredibly important for the tech world, for things like AI. Historically, because Greenland is 80% ice, it's been almost impossible to access them. But with climate change, that is starting to change. And there's a thought that in the decades to come that it could be more accessible, making it also really financially interesting for a lot of parties here. Savannah.
Ellison, and now I want some color from the ground. I mean, President Trump still refusing to rule out military action in Greenland, saying, you know, you'll essentially find out what lengths we would go to here. How worried, let's start with the officials there. How worried are officials about that possibility?
So yesterday there was a press conference with Greenland's prime minister and deputy prime minister and finance minister, and they told Greenlanders that while they think a military invasion by the United States is unlikely, the prime minister said that they cannot rule it out. So they said they are working with territorial officials to come up with civil preparedness plans so they can give people who live here guidance in the event that happens, including things like having food stored for at least 5 days for an entire family in the event there is some sort of military action. But again, the prime minister also saying that they think it is not likely, but they feel like they have to be prepared because, in his words, they can't rule it out at this point either. Savannah.
Ellison, what about the people of Greenland? What are you hearing from them about all this?
You know, it's a lot of frustration, anger. Many people kept saying it's crazy that Donald Trump keeps insisting on this. The message we hear from people again and again, and you see it, by the way, when you're in town, on store signs. They even have T-shirts that they're selling that says Greenland is not for sale. A lot of people also telling us that right now they feel afraid because they're not sure what could happen next. Take a listen.
He must understand this. Because no is no.
We Greenlander, we don't want to be Americans. We really live in danger because we don't know what it can happen with Greenland. Because we can be bombed like Venezuela have been bombed.
So that is a real sense you get from speaking with people here, is that they're not just frustrated or angry. They genuinely are afraid because they feel like there's so much uncertainty at this time. One person telling us that they look at Donald Trump as an authoritarian, saying we have Putin on one side of the world, we have Trump on the other, both of them trying to do the same things. Savannah.
All right. Ellison Barber, thank you very much for your reporting from the ground. Super helpful for context here. Well, for more on the president's push to control Greenland, let's get the foreign perspective. We're going to bring in Danish Member of Parliament Flemming Møller Mortensen. He is a member of the country's Social Democrat Party and a spokesman on Greenlandic affairs. Flemming, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Really helpful to get to speak with you. I just want to start here. I mean, how surprised are you at how confrontational this has become, and really the fact that this is even an issue in the first place?
I think all Danes, all people living inside the Kingdom of Denmark, we feel that this is really unbelievable. And it's unbelievable because we have for decades been very, very close allied to the US. So this is frightening everybody, and we think it can't be right, because it should be dialogue and political discussions that should be the frame of how to talk about the challenges in the Arctic when it comes to security and other matters.
In terms of security, I mean, President Trump's argument here is that Denmark can't protect Greenland from China, from Russia, like the U.S. could. In your view, is there any merit to that argument?
No, because exactly as your reporter told, that the U.S. has been in Greenland since World War II and also during the World War II. And there's an agreement back from the 50s explaining that the U.S. can do almost whatever they want to do in Greenland. And every year we have discussions between U.S., Greenland and Denmark how to follow that agreement, and if new things has to be followed up. And also for decades we have been having a common understanding that the Arctic should be a low tense area where we should not develop more than needed. So US are able to do almost whatever they want to do in Greenland without taking over the country. So to us it's really, really hard to see the Trump administration making that pressure and showing that aggression to a very close ally as the Kingdom of Denmark.
Fleming, yesterday one of your colleagues, another Danish member of parliament, made headlines here in the U.S. for using some strong language directed at President Trump. This was during a European Parliament debate. What are you hearing from other members of parliament and also Danes in general about President Trump's threats?
We think that it should not be. And I tell you that the Danish Parliament and the Greenlandic Parliament, we are very united in saying that Greenland is not for sale, but we want to take up the diplomatic dialogue. If there will be anything we can do, we will do it together with the US. But taking over Greenland, taking over the Greenlandic population, as it was just something you can buy, that's really, really hard to see. And of course, that's frightening people, especially in Greenland, but also the whole Danish population is really, how to say it, worried. More than worried, we really fear what's going to happen. Also because the Trump administration and Trump himself has expressed that many times that it could also be a matter of how to use the defense, the forces to take over Greenland. And we are NATO members. The whole Kingdom of Denmark are a member of NATO, and we of course are willing, and we are also planning to invest more in the Arctic region, both from the Danish side but also from other European countries. And that's also what we see just now, that the European NATO countries, we are really united in saying and showing to the US administration that we are willing to do more in Arctic, but let's talk about it. Let's talk about how to do it. It should not be a matter of taking over Greenland. It's unbelievable that we are in that situation with a very close ally as the US has been for decades.
Fleming, you mentioned NATO, you mentioned European allies. Take us inside what you know about right now as other EU nations and as those NATO allies work with Denmark to try to come up with a strategy here. First, to respond just generally to this threat from President Trump, to the fact that he will not rule out using military force to take Greenland. But then also on the other side of this, right, is it's not for sale. And then he says there's going to be this 10% tariff. What's going on between allies right now to try to come up with a strategy to respond?
It has been more than great to see how many allied we are having as Kingdom of Denmark. So much solidarity has been shown to our kingdom, and that's from so many countries. Also to them, it's a very, very difficult situation to see that allied are treating each other that way as we see just now. So we have seen it from European countries, but also from countries outside Europe. And of course, that's extremely important because the Kingdom of Denmark, we are not able to do that much But if we bring it to the EU Commission, if we bring it to the organization of all NATO countries, having these discussions about what should be the track for better security and forces in the Arctic, we will do whatever we are able to do. And it's so great to see that we're not speaking only with the Danish voice, but we are speaking with a lot of other countries' voices too.
Fleming, we've had some recent world events, totally different set of circumstances, but where the president has essentially ended up making good on using military force to get something done that he's been discussing publicly. Something that he has not ruled out here, as I mentioned, and as he has done in several different fashions publicly recently. How do you think this ultimately gets resolved, knowing that that threat is on the table?
First, I will say that I really understand what also your reporter picked up from Greenland and the capital of Nuuk, that so many people living in Greenland, they are really frightened. They are really fearing what's going to happen. And I understand them. And it's so hard to hear families that they are in a very difficult situation with their kids and youngsters, to understand the risk of their country just now. But of course, as a politician and as a former minister, I believe in picking up the dialogue between countries, and that has been the most efficient way of securing peace in so many years. That has been talking together, trying to understand each other, not making a pressure during the medias to other countries and to a very close ally. So we are extremely shocked about the situation. Yeah. And of course, it's nice to hear also from the US that politicians there are having an understanding about the situation in the Kingdom of Denmark and also supporting us.
Fleming Müller-Martensen, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We so appreciate your time and your perspective gives us a great understanding here. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Well, back here at home, might not have to tell you that the weather is a big story. January's deep freeze, though, is showing parts of the East Coast a little mercy this morning. It's not going to be for long, though. Tens of millions of Americans from the Northeast to Florida are still feeling winter's icy chill, even though there will be a little warm up this afternoon. Lake effect snow. Look at the snow. It pummeled western New York, creating some pretty dangerous driving conditions. Today's brief relief from the frigid temperatures, though, it is just a tease. That's because a fresh Arctic blast has taken aim at the south this weekend, and then there's this chance of a big winter storm all up and down the East Coast. While you try and keep warm, let's get a check at your morning news now weather, let you know what you're getting into as you head out the door. Andrea Romero is here. She's got more details on what lies ahead. Good morning.
Good morning, Savannah. There's a lot going on in the weather department today, so let's take it piece by piece. We're going to begin talking about the lake effect snow. Of course, we have these snow showers that will be expanding into the northeast as this low pressure continues to travel through the area. Cold and blustery through the northeast with heavy bands of lake effect snow continuing, especially downwind of Lake Ontario, Lake Erie. That's where we have those heavy snowfall amounts. As we can look, the lake effect snow will continue to pile up, and the highest totals will be probably downwind of Lake Ontario. Looking at some of those totals, we can see over 6 to 12 inches, especially here downwind of Lake Ontario and also Lake Michigan. We can see some high amounts in that area. Now, as far as the temperatures, some areas do get a brief relief from the extreme cold that will be today, and then that relief of the cold will continue into parts of the East Coast tomorrow, with temperatures that will be maybe a little bit above average after dealing with all that Arctic air the last couple of days. We'll definitely enjoy that slight warm up, but it won't last for long because we can see that Arctic cold air that will bring back those cold temperatures into the weekend. Especially, we're looking at sub-zero temperatures and wind chills that will be even colder. And of course, the cold air is the first ingredient that we need for that that major storm that we're tracking for later this week. It begins as a Pacific storm that's going to be moving into the southwest. It's going to be picking up all that Pacific moisture, surging into the plains. And then we're also going to get some of that Gulf moisture that's going to be feeding into the storm. And that's going to combine with that Arctic air. It's going to be crashing into that tropical moisture. And then that's what's going to be producing the storm that's going to be bringing snow and ice Friday afternoon, stretching from parts of New Mexico, some rain in Arizona, Texas. We're looking at snow that's going to be moving across all that area, crippling ice storm from Texas to the Carolinas. And then we have that heavy snow that will be moving into the northeast for the weekend. So we're talking about perhaps the biggest storm that we've seen in several years that's going to be impacting a large part of the country. And of course, we're talking about snow and we're talking about ice, which is so dangerous.
So dangerous for driving. Flying's not going to happen. You know what, though? If it's this cold, I would rather it be pretty with some snow.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And that's what we're going to have in the Northeast, but some areas are going to get that ice. And that's what worries me the most.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much. We'll see you in a little bit. Well, in Minnesota, the Trump administration is continuing its crackdown on anti-ICE protests in the state and on its Democratic leaders. Yesterday, the Justice Department subpoenaed at least 5 Democratic officials from the state. It includes Governor Tim Walz and also Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey. This is all over, of course, immigration enforcement. Well, today marks 2 weeks since 37-year-old Renee Good was shot and killed by an ICE officer in her vehicle in Minneapolis. That then intensified the anti-ICE protests there. Initially, the Trump administration argued Good weaponized her vehicle against the officer. Now, though, President Trump appears in a way to be shifting his tone on her death.
I felt horribly when I was told that the young woman who was had the tragedy. It's a tragedy. It's a horrible thing. Everybody would say, ICE would say the same.
NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa is in Minneapolis, as she has been covering all the latest for us. Maggie, good morning. So just first, what can you tell us about these subpoenas and how Minnesota's Democratic lawmakers are responding to this?
Sure, Savannah. I mean, these subpoenas are a striking escalation in a process that we knew already was playing out. The Department of Justice had said that the Trump administration was investigating those basically top Minnesota Democrats. It also includes Attorney General Keith Ellison and St. Paul's Mayor Kali Hur, and basically everybody unilaterally speaking out and blasting this move. Governor Walz calling it political theater, calling the tactics baseless. I want to pull up Mayor Frey's statement about this, though, and read you that in full. He posted this on X last night, and he said, when the federal government weaponizes its power to intimidate local leaders for doing their jobs, every American should be concerned. He goes on to say, we shouldn't live in a country where federal law enforcement is used to play politics or crack down on local voices they disagree with. And that last part is really poignant because sort of the main factor, or at least a main factor that the DOJ has said that they're investigating, is the words used by these local politicians. It became incredibly infamous when Mayor Frey said ICE should get the F out of Minneapolis. That's been replayed a lot. Governor Walz also saying that ICE should leave the city. So it's been a question of, is their speech punishable? And critics have said that they find that alarming, including those politicians. Savannah.
Maggie, as we mentioned, it's been 2 weeks since Renee Good was fatally shot by an ICE officer in Minneapolis, and really this just launched and intensified anti-ICE protests across the state. Tell us, you are there on the ground. What is the current situation on the ground? What are these protests looking like?
Yeah, so basically there are almost always protests, like every afternoon, every evening outside the local ICE headquarters. You see a lot of the most chaotic moments there. That's in St. Paul. And then you also just have random protests popping up around the city. Basically, when ICE shows up anywhere, the amount of people, that's outside the local headquarters there, the amount of people, the amount of residents, like everyday people, U.S. citizens who have whistles and who are communicating on encrypted chats like Signal to let everyone know when ICE pops up in a neighborhood, they all just come running out of their homes and start blowing whistles and yelling. So it's like these clashes pop up around the city as these enforcement operations continue. And it's also why you're seeing videos of arrests and ICE operations on the ground, because basically, Savannah, everyone is filming. A video just like that one, that's gone viral. Everyone has their cameras out. And I should note that video right there is ICE going into the home of a U.S. citizen. There he is, Chung Lee Scott Tao, with no criminal record. We checked. And he was later let go an hour later. And critics also blasting that citizens are being detained. Savannah.
Maggie, a source familiar with the plan said Vice President J.D. Vance is set to visit Minneapolis tomorrow. What do we know about his planned visit?
Right. We just know that he's planning to make comments here and have a roundtable discussion with, quote, local leaders and community members. That's according to that source familiar. We haven't gotten any names as to who he plans to sit down with or talk with. We haven't gotten any kind of schedule tied to this, but this would be the first time a top Trump official, or we should say anyway, the White House has made a visit to Minneapolis since the shooting of Renee Good. As you point out, today is the 2-week mark since that moment. So obviously it'll be a major moment in this city's recovery and in the post-shooting aftermath, and we're going to see what kind of impact it has here, Savannah.
All right, Maggie Vespa, thank you very much for your reporting there from the ground.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.